All right, everybody, it's just about 6:30. I see that we have a lot of people already in the classroom. Really appreciate everybody joining us. All the microphones are muted, so you don't have to worry about anybody hearing you or anything with regards to background noise. If you have any questions, you can ask through the chat feature, and we'll get to that at the end. This class is about 50 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. If you have any questions, you can always email me. My address is on the bottom, and we'll certainly provide that through the presentation itself. So really appreciate everybody joining us for this online class. This is actually something that we've done here for a while in Newport Morehead City. It's our third year of doing classes. The only difference this year with the current situation we have going on, we wanted to expand our virtual classes. So if you know of anybody that missed out tonight, please let them know that we have more classes planned, and if cross fingers everything goes okay, we're going to record this and post it on YouTube. If for some reason you're having technical issues, you can go to our website, weather.gov/Newport or /MHX and then / MHX Skywarn, and you can actually download this presentation. So if you get cut off, you know, I know it's almost kids' bedtime, things like that. If you get distracted, we're going to have a recorded version, and you can have our PDF on as well. You should be able to see and hear me through your PC or mobile device. Hopefully everything's going okay with that. And everybody that signed up and completed the class, we can tell who's logged on and logged off. You will get a certificate to the email you signed up with sometime tomorrow. So that will be in your email inbox. Now, as far as the interaction part, again, you can ask questions. If you look at the screen, we've got the ability to ask questions through the chat feature. I'll get to those at the end. And then if you raise your hand at the end of the class, I'll acknowledge you, and then you can ask a question through your microphone. I'll just unmute you, and we'll go with that. So any questions that pop up, just ask in the chat room, and we'll take them all at the end. By design, we leave about 10 minutes at the end for questions. Our hope is really that you get to know a little bit more about the Weather Service. I know we have folks on from all across the country, learn how to report severe weather to us. We mentioned the certificate will be sent to your email. The class is about 50 minutes, and then we'll leave 10 more minutes at the end for questions, so about an hour total. As far as topics go, we're going to go over the Weather Service itself. This is a Skywarn class, so we're going to focus on spring Skywarn, things like tornadoes, thunderstorms, and hail. We'll talk about squall lines and bow echoes, and then we'll really throughout the class review spotter procedures in terms of how to report that information to us. A couple things to keep in mind. There's a lot of information in this presentation. We want to give you a little bit of the science so that you understand why things happen in terms of meteorology, but our main goal is to report bad weather to us. So the science is there just for your knowledge, but we're going to highlight when you have hail, when you have high winds, we want to know about it. That is the main focus of the class, not that you have a meteorology degree and you know everything about weather. We'll give you some science, but again, the main focus is reporting. So we're going to highlight when to report, what to report, how to do it, the things that we're looking for. And again, if anything is, you know, you have a question about anything, just ask it in the chat room, and we'll tackle those questions at the end. So first things first, a little bit about the Weather Service, who we are. Our main mission is to protect life and property. We do that by issuing warnings for blizzards, ice storms, winter storms, and things of that nature. So while we give you a 7-day forecast, our main goal, protection of life and property, the big stuff, hurricanes, winter storms, high winds, and some of it's specialized forecasts for the aviation community and also the fire weather folks. We don't do this alone. Our office is in Eastern North Carolina. We'll have more on that in a second, but we have over 100 offices in the country. And I know we have folks signed up from California to Missouri, to New York State, to Michigan. So really appreciate everybody joining us tonight. You have your local office that serves us or serves you. So everything we do, your local office does that as well. On that note, if you're not from Eastern North Carolina, no problem. You're going to get information from your local office in the coming weeks, and we'll go through that procedure on how to sign up. So while the focus of this class is Eastern North Carolina, anybody can take it and anybody can become a spotter for the Weather Service. As far as we're concerned, we're located in Newport, North Carolina. I always tease people that we're as far east in North Carolina as you can go until you reach the ocean. So we cover places like the Outer Banks, down toward the Crystal Coast, Greenville, Jacksonville, Snow Hill, those areas across roughly the eastern quarter of North Carolina. One thing that's interesting about our office and any office along the coast, we don't just cover land areas. That yellow area is where we do forecast and warnings for. So any of the local sounds and rivers out to 20 nautical miles into the ocean, we do a forecast. And that blue area beyond 20 miles, we do warnings only. And the larger agency, the Ocean Prediction Center, covers that area. So if you've flown before, if you've traveled on land, if you've been on a boat, we've got you covered in terms of the forecast. We are open 24/7, 365 days of the year. In a situation like this, we may cut back staffing some, but our main mission is still being fulfilled. You have men and women in there. I know we've got severe weather across parts of the country this evening serving you. As far as our office is concerned, hurricanes are a big deal. The upper left is pretty much all of our staff, minus about 2 people that lived in our office for multiple days during Hurricane Florence. The lower left is our building with hurricane shutters. All Weather Service offices are designed to be safe so that we shelter in place, but we can continue to protect you with those watches and warnings. So that's a little bit about the Weather Service. Now I want to go into what Skywarn is. It's a volunteer program run by the Weather Service, and the main goal is to provide ground truth reports of significant weather. What is ground truth? What is actually happening where you live. We know that the weather varies from town to town, from block to block. So you can confirm that it's really bad out, or perhaps it's not as bad as we're thinking. And that's where those ground truth reports come in. You really help us in our warning decision process. We as a meteorologist, we have to issue those warnings no matter what, based on what the radar's saying, based on what the satellite's saying, what we think is going on in the atmosphere. But your reports add credibility to what is happening. And what I mean by that is if we're watching a storm and we think it's severe and you confirm that, yes, it's really that bad out, and we add that additional information to the warning, that's updated information that people can use. And that can be life-saving information. Think about how often we get warnings on our phone and we say, oh, that's not going to impact us. That's, you know, I don't have to worry about that. But when people see that their local town next to them is being impacted, they're going to take that more serious. The other way you help us is, let's say we're watching a storm and we think it's really bad, looks bad on radar, but then we get multiple reports that the hail is not as big as we think. We may hold off and not issue a warning. That's just as important, not crying wolf, not issuing warnings when we don't need it. So we really mean it that the trained eye of our storm spotter is still our greatest asset. Radar is nice. It shows us what's happening up in the sky. Our new satellites, GO-16, is fantastic, but it's still very nice to confirm what is actually happening at the ground. Before we go much further in our presentation, I want to talk about some definitions, things that you should know, especially as a good spotter or even just a community citizen wanting to know more about the weather. The difference between a watch and warning is very important. Watches are conditions are favorable for it to happen. Warnings are meaning it's happening or it's imminent. And I know you've probably seen this on social media. I really like the analogy of cooking and then something already being cooked. So the analogy would be if you're making brownies, the watch would be that the flour and eggs and the oil, they're all out on the counter. You know what's probably going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. All the ingredients have not come together. Now, if we upgrade to a warning with those brownies, that means that the brownies are in the oven, you can hear the timer beeping in the background, and they're ready to come out. That means it's imminent or it's going to occur soon. So kind of think of that cooking analogy when you're talking about watches and warnings. As far as severe thunderstorms go, our specific criteria is 1-inch hail larger or 58-mile-per-hour wind gust or stronger. And we don't just willy-nilly pick out those values. That's about the threshold that you're going to start to see some damage. You'll notice that lightning is not in there. We do not issue warnings for lightning. They are certainly life-threatening. We're in the top 5 in North Carolina, unfortunately, for deaths, lightning deaths in the country. We don't issue specific warnings for them, but we do forecasts and special weather statements and other things for that, because lightning occurs with any thunderstorm. So if we were to issue a warning, we would be issuing a lot of them. Want to talk about a couple more definitions, and then we'll get into our website a little bit, tornadoes and funnel clouds. And this is what I mean. Sit back, listen to what we're saying, but focus on the yellow text. A tornado is a rotating column of air in contact with the ground. It's got to be rotating. It's got to be in contact with the ground. A funnel cloud, it's rotating as well, but it is not in contact with the ground. So tornadoes and funnel clouds are similar, that they're rotating, but the main difference is, do they touch the ground? You're going to see that keyword rotating, rotating, rotating a lot, because that's very important when you're reporting severe weather to us in terms of funnel clouds or tornadoes. A little bit about our website. If you're watching from California or Texas or Oklahoma, we have folks on the call. Just go to weather.gov. Everything I'm showing you can access from your local website. So our local site here in Eastern North Carolina is weather.gov/Newport. You have the same thing whether you're in Little Rock or Seattle. Just go to weather.gov and click on your region of the country. It's really good for current information. You can book the forecast itself. I encourage people to either enter the zip code or click on the map, and that's where you can get a local 7-day forecast. And the website is really set up for basic weather or in-depth. So you can have an icon-based forecast. What do I need to wear to school and work? How warm is it going to get? Or if you scroll down the page a little bit, on the lower right, there's an hourly weather forecast. A lot of our emergency management partners and core partners really love this, because they can check on and off the variables they want. Temperature, wind speed. I'm a big gardener. I use this all the time for wind speed and rainfall. Very, very useful. Our website is something you're going to want to go to. Click on it, play around with it, and save or bookmark what you're most interested in it. For most sites, if you scroll down the page at the bottom, there's something called weather briefings. These are for significant weather. If you click on that, these are some examples. Our winter storm a couple years ago in 2018, and certainly Hurricane Florence. You'll have access to a PDF document. It's usually about 5 to 15 slides, and it tells you of significant upcoming weather. Do not forget about social media. We in the Weather Service really use that as the megaphone to get out our message. So to cut through the weeds, to wave our hands up and down and say, this is what you need to focus in on. This is what's important weather-wise. You can see our example on the left from Hurricane Florence. We really tried to emphasize to not focus on the category of a hurricane. In fact, you never, ever should focus on just the category of the storm. Focus on all the impacts that can occur. And we use our YouTube channel to post videos like this, training, and also upcoming severe weather. So anywhere in the country, again, if you just search NWS, in our case, it's Morehead City. If you're in New York City, LA, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, just enter that into your social media channels and you'll find your local office. Last thing before we get more into the Skywarn class, while we don't have an official app, we do have a mobile forecast. If you go to mobile.weather.gov, you can add that to your home screen, whether it's an Android or an iPhone. For depending on what it is, you can add it to your home screen and it will act similar to an app, and it's a very good local forecast from your local weather service office. Before we jump into some of the ingredients for thunderstorms, one of the last websites I want to mention is the Storm Prediction Center. The men and women out there in Oklahoma do an excellent job. Their job is to really heighten the awareness across the country for severe weather. In conjunction with the local office, they issue watches, tornado watches, and severe thunderstorm watches. And they also do an outlook through 8 days in terms of severe risk. Is it a marginal risk? Is it a moderate risk? And they really highlight severe weather outbreaks, whether they're major or minor. So that's a good website to follow. All right, so we talked a little bit about the Weather Service, who we are and what we do. Now we're going to get into the crux of the class, thunderstorms, tornadoes, and hail, and we're going to talk a little bit about reporting. So what causes thunderstorms? You really need a couple ingredients, moisture, instability, and lift. I like to think of it as a recipe. If you're missing any one of these ingredients, it's not going to happen. That's why we don't get thunderstorms every single day. As far as moisture goes, we're talking moisture in the atmosphere to form clouds and eventually form into rain and thunderstorms. Along the East Coast, and specifically for Eastern North Carolina, this is one ingredient we're usually not lacking. We've got the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, a lot of local waterways near us, and our wind flow is usually from the south. So we have a tremendous amount of moisture. If you've lived in the Southeast at all, it's usually humid in the spring and summer. So that's one ingredient we usually have. The second ingredient is a little harder to come by sometimes, especially in the cooler months, say in the wintertime or the early spring. It's called instability, and it's really the difference in air masses between really cold air or really warm air. And you can think of it a couple different ways. One way is think about your typical hazy, hot, and humid day. It's really, really warm down where we live, say 90 degrees. And as you go up in the atmosphere, it gets really cold quickly. In a scenario like that, that air is naturally going to want to rise faster, and we call that very unstable. Another situation is think about any major outbreak you've had in your area of severe weather. Unfortunately, it usually starts off with very warm conditions. Then the storms come through, and the next day it's very cold. So you can have that class of air masses on the horizontal horizon where you have very cold air rapidly coming in. So think of instability as fuel for those thunderstorms, and usually it's a clash of air masses, a lot of warm air with cold air, either higher up in the atmosphere or farther to your west. I like to think of the Coke bottle example. In this example, the Coke or the pop or the soda, depending on what part of the country you're from, or the Pepsi or the Mountain Dew, when you shake it up, that moisture, that represents the moisture in the atmosphere, and the bubbles represent the instability. At this point, nothing's happened. We don't have our last ingredient, but boy, we certainly have a lot of potential. And you can see this in the clouds as they grow taller and higher. If they look bubbly in nature, that's a pretty good sign that you have some severe weather potential brewing. Now, the last ingredient you need is some type of lifting mechanism to really set everything off. We're going to focus on two. There are other ones, but for time purposes, we'll focus on the two major ones. The first one is a cold front. The example is in the upper right. You have very cold air coming in. Cold air is very dense, and it abruptly lifts the warm air out ahead of it. This is where we get most of our showers and thunderstorms and what we call deep convection, 40, 50, 60,000 feet tall. These produce the most vigorous thunderstorms and the highest threat for tornadoes and large storms. Doesn't mean you can't get one with a warm front, but a cold front, apples to apples, is usually the one that we're more concerned with. With a warm front, the cold air is already in place. It's low, it's dense, it doesn't want to move out of the way. So as the warm air comes in, it gradually rides up, and it's much more shallow. You get rain from a warm front, you can have thunderstorms, you can have a tornado, you can have hail. But by and large, it's not as deep in the atmosphere, so you don't have as great of a chance for really bad storms like you would with the cold front. So cold fronts, warm fronts are two areas of lift, areas of low pressure, terrain, air forced over higher mountains or hills. Here along the coast, we have the sea breeze. I know you folks down in Florida and Texas have that as well. You have the lake breezes up in the Great Lakes. So there's a lot of different mechanisms, outflows from other thunderstorms that can certainly provide your lift. So at this point, we're going to talk about how to report information to us. And throughout the rest of the presentation, we're at the 18-minute mark if you're keeping track. We're going to go over a type of weather, and we're going to talk about how to report it to us. This is our 800 number for Eastern North Carolina. If you're not watching from Eastern North Carolina, what you're going to do at the end of tonight, if you signed up and you registered and you took your class, I have all your information, and I will forward it on to your local office, and they'll be in contact with you. You don't want to call this 800 number if you're not from Eastern North Carolina. With your 800 number, either the one for the folks that live with us or the one you get here in the next week, it's a special number. So when you call this, this is where we want reports to be made to. We prefer the 800 number because we can ask you questions. How large is the hail? Did that occur 10 minutes ago or right now? We have unlimited lines that carry over. So I'm going to talk about other ways, social media, email, stuff like that. But 800 number, those are usually the most preferred way. And we want you to say it in a certain order: who you are, what you saw, where you saw it, and when. Very, very important, because if we're talking tornadoes or large hail, we don't have time to waste. We need to know who you are, where you are, what you saw, and the time. And the time's important because if it was 20 minutes ago, let's say you took shelter, that's fine, but we need to know that because we're going to confirm that with the radar itself. So if it doesn't match up, that's going to have some confusion. The other way you can report to us, the first two ways we're going to talk about is email. Again, the 800 number is the priority. Email is good supplement. Hey, I'm going to follow up with a picture of the hail. Send it to our email address. Same procedure, who, what, when, where, when you saw it. And again, if you're not from Eastern North Carolina, please wait after this class. I would wait a week to 10 days for your local office to contact you. I will forward on your information, and they will provide how they want reported weather to them. And I surmise it's going to be some 800 number or email or form. So it'll be something similar. What you need to remember is the procedure will be the same whether you're in Oklahoma or Eastern North Carolina. The specific number or email, that's what's going to vary. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're not from the local area. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about thunderstorms specifically. We talked about the ingredients that make them. We're going to start on the far left of this graphic, the single cell storm, and we're going to go all the way over to the right for the supercell. With the single cell storm, I like to back up things with pictures. Remember I showed you that Coke bottle example, see the clouds building up and you can see some instability in the atmosphere. One more variable we'd like to look for severe weather is shear. That's different wind speeds or directions in the atmosphere. Either the winds get really strong with height or they change direction with height. And shear is just a twist in the atmosphere. If we have a little bit of shear, our threat for severe weather is less. And I'll go back a graphic. So we don't have a lot of shear with the single cell storms, so the severe threat is a little less. As you increase to multiple cells and supercells, shear increases, twisting, and the instability, potential for storms increases. If you combine those two on the far right, you get supercells. And we're going to go through those examples here. So when you don't have a lot of shear, everything's very in the vertical. So we've got a shower and thunderstorm developing. Because there's no shear though, it's very up and down. So as soon as the storm develops, it collapses on itself. And this is an excellent cross section of a single cell, or sometimes we call this pulse thunderstorms. Between 5 and 10 minutes, they pulse up. It looks really exciting on radar. You can see that red area at the 10-minute mark. That represents some strong winds and maybe some hail and rainfall. Once it gets going though, because there's no shear in the atmosphere, it falls and collapses and really kills off the storm. So by 15 or 20 minutes, it's collapsed on the ground and it's done. It's done whatever's going to happen with the storm itself. So there's not a long life cycle, so it doesn't have as much of a chance to become severe. Can it produce hail? Yes. Can it produce a tornado? Yes. But since the life cycle is really short, up, down, then a new storm forms, up, down. These are what you call garden variety thunderstorms. Those ones you see on radar, they look really good. You're hoping for rain, and then by the time they get to your house, poof, they fall apart, and then down the road a new one pops up. One thing you can get out of pulse thunderstorms is hail. Sometimes it's smaller, but sometimes it can be large depending on how quickly that storm develops. We want to know about any size hail. And you might say, well, Eric, you said severe is 1 inch, quarter. Why don't you just want to know about those? Remember, you're helping us gauge the storm. So you might not be in the worst part of the storm, but by you telling us it's the size of a penny, then the worst part of the storm, we can surmise it's worse than a penny. So you help us gauge by knowing exactly how strong the storm is. So use some estimation. Change works. Even better would be to measure it after the storm passes. We don't want anybody going out there during the storm. So if you measure the width of the hail, you can tell us exactly what it is. Refer to it as a quarter or size of a nickel. And you can see the picture of the lower left is beautiful. I've got hail the size of quarters. I mean, that really, if you just send me a picture of hail, it's hard to know how big it is without a reference. Whatever you do, especially if you say you took the virtual Skywarn class out of Newport, North Carolina, do not use marbles as a reference. Never, ever, ever, ever use marbles as a reference. And the reason is they vary. Is it the red marble? Is it the gray one? Is it the green one? You need a standard unit of measurement like a quarter or penny, or please measure it with a ruler. So in summary, measure any size hail, report it to us. Make sure you measure the biggest stone. So an example would be, hey, we've got a lot of nickel size hail here, but some are as large as the size of a quarter. And again, do not use marble sized hail because it doesn't help us in terms of knowing what's going on. Now, we're going down that chart. We're increasing the shear a little bit, increasing the instability a little bit, and mainly because of the shear. If you look at that diagram on the right, because of the difference in shear, it's tilting the storm. So notice on either the diagram or the picture, instead of the storms being up and down, they're tilted. Because of that, they can last longer, they can organize into multiple cells and squall lines, and they have a higher chance of severe weather because of that shear. Being tilted, they can constantly seek out warm, moist air and keep themselves going. Instead of 15 or 20 minutes, they may last an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. And instead of just being your city, they may impact a lot of the state. So we call these multiple cells, squall lines, things of that nature. Because they're more organized, they have the potential to produce more, flooding or high winds. So if you get any type of flooding, a lot of times these multiple cells will train over the same area. They repeat over and over and over again, and we have issues with flooding. With flash flooding, we want to know when it's something is significant. So not that poor drainage area that always gets a little bit of water. Ideally, we want to know before it gets really bad. So an example would be, hey, the roads are becoming covered with water. The stream behind my house, which is never up this high, it's the highest I've ever seen, that type of thing. We want to know how deep the water is. We do not anticipate, or we do not want you to go outside and measure the depth. Just use your visual aids. It's up to the tires on a car. It's up to the stop sign. It's past the curb, that type of thing. Any additional information, are roads washed out, impassable, that type of thing. If you have a rain gauge, a specific amount of rain report is awesome. For our area, we get a lot of rain. So our rough rule is about 2 inches. 2 inches in a day, 2 inches in a short period of time. We're not going to be upset if you call with 1.5 inches of rain. All we're trying to get is you don't need to call every drop into the local office. With that said, I highly recommend you consider something called Coco Raws. This month of March Madness, I know I'm a big sports fan. Unfortunately, we don't have basketball, but the Coco Raws program does a campaign in March to encourage folks to sign up because we're always looking for new spotters. People move on, they move out of the area. If you have a young person, if you have somebody interested in weather, they want to be more involved, and this class is just not enough for them, push them over toward Coco Raws. It's cocoraws.org. You can see the link on the screen. You spend about $30 to $35 on that plastic gauge. Every day you report rain and snowfall measurements. Most days you're going to report 0. You do it through a website. You can get the app on your phone. Takes hardly any time. Then you can view that data online. You can look back at history. You can look at your neighbors. It's a great resource. We help with the program, but a lot of folks are involved, and it's very good for historical purposes, but also those reports come directly into the office. So our spotter program is please, please, please call when you have bad weather. The Coco Raws program is a little bit more of a commitment. And I especially encourage schools, people in the sciences that are looking for STEM opportunities, real world examples of math, to consider that program. The other way storms can organize, we mentioned into training and flash flooding. They can also organize into wind producing cells. A lot of times we'll call these squall lines. The example on the left is a bow echo. The strong winds are pushing the line out and causing it to bow. That's why we call it that. So we certainly want to know about strong winds. Sometimes you see a feature called a shelf cloud. This is the leading edge to the outflow of a thunderstorm. Doesn't always mean it's severe. In this case, we did have an 82-mile-per-hour gust down here in Fort Macon, North Carolina. But it does mean that the winds are picking up and a wind shift is occurring. That is actually the outflow of the storm itself. Here's an example. I'm gonna go past that. I didn't realize, I apologize how loud the audio was. That was a microburst in Canada. The point of that was to show you that we can have 80, 90 mile per hour winds with a microburst. Those are, we call them straight line winds. Remember, air rises in a thunderstorm, but it also falls down in what's called a downdraft. And if that air accelerates and hits the ground at a fast speed, it can cause quite a bit of damage. Sometimes people think if they have, a lot of trees down, it had to have been a tornado. Not exactly. It's more the pattern than the damage itself. But not to get too far off track, if we have any amount of wind damage, we want to know about it. Trees down. How big are the trees? Was it already dead? We're not going to go through all these questions with you. You are the eyes in your area. You know if that tree was really old and had been very sturdy, or if it was already damaged in a hurricane. The specifics help us gauge the intensity of the wind. You can certainly estimate the wind speed based on damage, but we usually just focus on what is damaged. Unless you have an anemometer, we're more concerned with what the damage is than a wind speed estimate, because that can vary pretty wildly. Another way you can make a report, again, this is much farther down on the list, is social media. Ours is facebook.com/NWS Morehead City. Depending on where you live, it's going to be NWS Mount Holly or Binghamton or Milwaukee or New Orleans. So it's going to vary on your local office. This is down on the list because, again, that 800 number, we answer 24/7. We do a ton of social media, but we're not always on. We've got other things going on in the office. So if it's urgent, please call the 800 number. Facebook is very similar to email. It's good to send us a picture or video and keep with that same pattern. Who you are, what you are, what you saw, where you saw it, and when. And the reason is you've sat through this class. We got about another 20 minutes and we'll be done. Give yourself some credit that you took the class and you're a trained spotter. All right, we're kind of on the home stretch here. We're at the far end of the diagram. We're going to talk about supercells. That's where you have the most lift in the atmosphere and the most rotation. This is the most likely type of storm to produce large hail and the possibility of tornadoes. In our advanced class, we go more in depth on this. We're going to kind of keep it basic because this is the basic class, but you have rising air on the left side of this storm. That's where your wall cloud or your tornado would be most likely. Then you have the exhaust part of the storm, which on this diagram is the far right. That's where it's dark, it's windy, you have heavy rain and some large hail. So a supercell is really a full-blown engine from left to right. You have an intake on the left, and then an exhaust on the far right. This is what a supercell would look like on radar. On the far right is a tornado we actually had a couple falls ago. A lot of times people talk about a hook echo. That's the little curly Q you see there. The radar really detecting the rotation based on reflectivity in this example. One thing we get here in eastern North Carolina, we do get tropical tornadoes. In fact, that's where we get a lot of our tornadoes. A lot of them are toward the lower end of the scale in terms of intensity, but they occur very short time frame. So this is something we certainly need to know about. And another thing we get here in our part of the state, and for folks in Wisconsin, you might, this might not be related to you, but anybody near bodies of water, it can be the Great Lakes, it can be down in Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, and here the Atlantic Ocean or the Sounds, water spouts can form. They are tornadoes over the water. They tend to be more isolated and not as strong, but since they're impacting people on boats, they're much more vulnerable. So we need to know about those as well. So the procedure with tornadoes and funnel clouds, we mentioned this in the beginning, it has got to have rotation. We're going to quiz you here coming up in a few moments in terms of some quiz questions to kind of reinforce that point. Does it extend to the ground? What is the damage like? Is it over water? But it has got to be rotating. If it's in contact with the ground, it's a tornado. If not, it's a funnel cloud. But our first question is, do you actually see rotation? One of the last ways on to report, you can do that via Twitter. You can follow us at NWS Morehead City. And again, the priority is 800 number and then email, social media way at the bottom. 800 number is still the most preferred way. If you're going to do it on Twitter, same type of thing. Where you are, what you saw, and when. All right, so hopefully everybody's with us. I hope everybody's enjoying the class. We're going to mix it up here a little bit. And if you haven't been paying attention, look toward the screen because we're going to start to ask some quiz questions. So looking at the screen, are these funnel clouds? And the big hint is they are not rotating. So are these funnel clouds? And the question is they are not rotating. So I'm going to ask that. So you should see on your screen a poll question. And the question is this a funnel cloud? I know you can't see the picture anymore, but the key there is it's not rotating. So we got about half of you voted, so we'll give it a couple more seconds and we'll see how we are. All right, very good. So most of you have voted. 80% had the right answer, and the right answer is no, it is not a funnel cloud because it's not rotating. So it's a little bit of a trick question in that we've got something that's not in contact with the ground. So the picture on the left, that looks scary. If I saw that and I didn't know, it's a still picture, so it's hard to tell. That looks like a funnel cloud. It's got triangular shape. It's almost touching the ground, but it's not. But the key there is it is not rotating. You're going to see some crazy clouds in your day. Low-hanging clouds. We call these scud clouds, scattered cumulus under deck. They can look the craziest and the most triangular and the most threatening, but if they are not rotating, it's not a tornado or funnel cloud. And you'll know obvious rotation when you see it. So hopefully you enjoyed some interaction. We're going to ask you another one. So if you didn't get that one, you got one more chance coming up. When we talk about tornadoes, we talk about the enhanced Fujita scale. Like the Saffir-Simpson scale, the lower end is the weaker range of intensity. The upper end is the higher end. So an EF5 is stronger than an EF0. And it's all based on damage. One thing you may be interested in is we determine if it's a tornado or not based on the pattern. So I'm going to go through two slides with you. We do something called a storm survey when an emergency manager calls us or we have an area of damage, and we'll go out and we look at two things. The first one is what is the damage and how much is it? That gives us a scale, either the Fujita scale, how strong it was, or just a wind speed. So the first thing we look at is amount of damage. Was it a brick building, a mobile home? Was it a hotel? Was it trees? Were they softwood trees or hardwood trees? And we have a book, and engineers have developed it, and they have a different rating, a lower end, a medium, and an upper end on the damage. And based on what's damaged, we determine the wind speed, 100, 80 miles per hour, what have you. The second thing we look for is the pattern of the damage, and it's the pattern of the damage that determines if it's a tornado. Has nothing to do with the amount of damage. This picture right here, Chad was one of our former interns. We have trees that are uprooted and they're pointing toward each other. We call this a convergent pattern. That's indicative of a tornado. Contrast that with this, everything's in one direction, or sometimes we call it divergent. You'll see trees that are facing in different directions, but they're fanned out. So again, we determine what the wind speed is based on what's damaged, and it's the pattern that determines if it's a tornado. You can have a 100-mile-per-hour microburst, hundreds of trees down, and you can have a 70-mile-per-hour tornado, a couple limbs down. So I hope that gives you some perspective. It's not always the amount of damage that determines what's going on. It's really the pattern. Couple more, and then we're about the 37-minute mark. We're right on time to be done here in the next 10 minutes, and then we'll turn it over to you for some questions. So I got one more for you. If you didn't get the last one, look really carefully at this picture. I won't pull the poll up until you kind of stare at this picture. So the question with this one is this a tornado or funnel cloud? And my hint with this is it is rotating. So it's one of the two. I know with still pictures, it's hard to tell. So stare at your mobile device or your PC. Is this a tornado or a funnel cloud? And remember what we're looking for here in terms of is it a tornado or not? So let's do another poll. All right, is this a funnel cloud or tornado? And again, it is rotating, so it's one or the other. So I'll give you about 10 more seconds to get your vote in. All right, it looks like about 3/4 of us have voted. And the question is this a funnel cloud or tornado? And I think I did a yes, no, which I apologize for that. It should have been a selection on that. We'll have to fix that for the next one. So apologize for that. The correct answer is yes, it is a tornado. So if you put yes and surmise that, that is correct. I know it looks like our webcam froze up on us, so you might be lucky you don't have to see me the rest of this presentation, because I think we're totally frozen on that, but that's okay. You've seen enough of me. So that is a tornado, and the reason why it connects to the ground. So again, first thing, is it rotating? Yes. Is it in contact with the ground? Yes. So it's a tornado. If you look really carefully, you can see the circulation extends down because you can see the dust and debris on the bottom. So very good with that. I appreciate everybody answering those questions, and really curious your feedback after this class, what you think of this virtual class. We've done it a couple years, but we're always trying to improve it. One last way to report is a project called MPing. This is especially useful for, it would be hail in this avenue or high winds. It's probably more useful for wintertime precipitation, but it's put on by a couple different groups, University of Oklahoma, the Weather Service, NOAA, and NASA. It's really to track precipitation type. It's a really neat program. You can download the app, and I know some radar apps also have a ability to report that way. So that's another avenue that you can report as well. So we're going to wrap things up here. Just to remind you, please call us with your reports. The 800 number is the most preferred way. Your reports provide a clearer picture of what's going on. Don't assume that we know what's going on in your neighborhood. It's a real big myth. Let's say your neighborhood unfortunately has a lot of damage. You're probably thinking they've got to know about this, but sometimes we're the last to know. Please give us a call. Obviously, your safety is most important, getting your family together. If you can pass on the report after that, we really appreciate this. This is a tornado up in Greene County, up toward the Snow Hill area. Back in 2014, WNCT sent us that picture, so we're appreciative of that. And again, that's the 800 number for Eastern North Carolina. Please keep in mind, if you're not from the local area, don't call that number. Wait about a week to 10 days to get a follow-up email from your local office. A couple review slides, then we're going to turn it over to you. So hopefully we've got some questions in the chat room. If not, we'll come up with a couple. Just to review, tornadoes or funnel clouds we want to know about, any size hail, wind damage, are trees down, or is there damage to structures, heavy rainfall. Again, for our office, it's 2 inches in a short period of time or over a day. Just having a rain gauge is certainly useful to know the specific amount. For our area, the 800 number and email are the two preferred ways. And again, the 800 number would be the most preferred way. You'll receive some follow-up information if you're from outside of Eastern North Carolina. When should you not call us? If it's a non-severe report, don't call us. So remember, if you're calling and you're going to say, hey, I've got really strong winds, but you don't have a measurement of what it actually is, and you actually don't have damage, it's not helping us because it's nothing specific that we can work with. A non-specific report, it's really raining hard. There's a lot of lightning. It's really windy. It doesn't help us because there's nothing we can directly measure. We don't know how much rain, how strong the wind was. And as far as lightning goes, we have a lot of lightning detection systems. So we know where lightning is. The damage and the hail and things like that, that's much more significant in terms of knowing. So when else should you report? I would say definitely consider being a year-round spotter. And what we mean by that is in our local area, it's going to be hard to have true severe weather, which thankfully is a good thing, that you're not going to have hail and tornadoes and things like that. Get in the habit of reporting snowfall and rainfall to your local office. And that way, when the big stuff happens, you're ready and you know how to do it. So for us, and for most offices, because I did work up north for a little bit, snowfall reports are important. We want them to the nearest 1/10 of an inch. So not always 8 inches, 2 inches, 5 inches, measure to the 1/10 of an inch. Take a couple measurements to get an average. Any accumulation of ice. And again, I know I'm mentioning this as we head into the spring. The idea is you're likely to be able to report snow next year, and you get in the habit of knowing the 800 number and getting used to talking to us, then you'll be ready when the big stuff happens. So that's why we talk about that. That leads into our future classes here in Newport Morehead City. We've got 4 classes. This is a basic spring class. I hope you enjoyed it. The sister class to this is our basic winter class, and that goes over the same thing, who we are, what the Weather Service does, but we talk about nor'easters and ice storms and blizzards. We have a flood and tropical Skywarn, which covers flooding and the hurricane season down where we are. And our advanced class is usually done in person, but I'm gonna have to reconsider that with so many folks reaching out to us for instruction. We've had over 50 people sign up or attend tonight, which is about double the most we've ever had. We're gonna have to consider putting that online. That would be a follow-up to this class where you have more information. We always put this information on our website, weather.gov/Newport. If you're not from Eastern North Carolina, just go to your local office, weather.gov. The United States maps comes up, just click on your region, and if they have local Skywarn coming up, they're going to advertise that at the top of their class, at the top of the website, so you will not be left off. Be sure to keep current. Bookmark our website, weather.gov/Skywarn. We have a lot of stuff on there. We're very proud of this website. You can click on current schedule. If you forgot when to report or how to report, all that information is on there. And we've got YouTube training as well. So you can certainly do that. That is my email address. I'm going to give you a chance to jot it down. You should all probably have it here pretty soon, because when I send the certificate tomorrow morning, when I'm back at work, you will have that. So I'll give you a chance to jot that down. I'm going to hop out of the website, or hop out of this and go to our website. We're at the 45-minute mark, so we're doing very well to keep this class short. So we're going to hop out. I wanted to show you our website. So again, weather.gov/Newport or MHX. Most of them are going to post the information at the top. So in this case, virtual Skywarn. But if you scroll down on any of the Weather Service pages, often they have a Skywarn logo. If you just click on that, that will send you to your office's page. So this is how ours is set up. If you have any friends that miss this class and really want to take it, please pass on this website, because as you can tell from the current schedule, this is just the first of many trainings coming up. And by design, we only scheduled through the end of March just to see how everything plays out. If there's a lot of interest like there is tonight, we'll expand this into April. So share with friends. If you missed it, if you're just logging on, you can always go to our YouTube training. We broke this same presentation down into 7 parts, so you can take it that way and just email me when you're done. And then we have the winter version. Let's say you want to take something right now, you can't get enough of this, you can go to our YouTube channel. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn it over to you now. I want to do one more thing and kind of give some kudos to our sister office up to the north. They cover the Richmond area or Southeast Virginia. So this is the United States map, weather.gov. Again, click on your part of the country if you're not in Eastern North Carolina and you want more information. I feel for you folks out in the central part of the country. I see you've got some tornado watches out, and then we've got blizzard warnings and winter storm warnings. So pretty active day across the central part of the country. I'm going to pretend I live in Southeast Virginia. This is a Wakefield office. They do a good job with online training as well. This is just to show you an example. This is not my office. You scroll down. The Skywarn logo is right there, so you can click on that. And I know Mike, their leader, and Eric, both their leaders for Skywarn, have done a great job. So here's their online Skywarn. In fact, they've got one right now. But you can see that they've planned out into the month of April. So go to your local office if you're not from the area, and you may find some training on a local level. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you. So the way this is going to work, I'll go back to the presentation just to reiterate how to do this. On your control panel, you're done. So if you need to log off, the kids got to go to bed, and you've had enough. You're at the 50-minute mark. You can drop off. You do not have to stay on anymore. But it's pretty good to hear the questions. If you want to ask a question, there's 2 ways you can do it. the bottom of your control panel looks different than mine. You should be able to ask a question. You can do it to the whole room, but if you want to send it private to me, that's fine. So you can do it that way, and that works if you have a mic or not. If you want to talk and you want to verbally ask me a question, what you want to do is raise your hand. That way I know, who you are and that you want to ask something. I will unmute your phone or your microphone or whatever you're using. So it'll be your microphone and you can ask away, and we'll do that one at a time. So it's something we haven't done before this way. So I'm curious how this works, and it's all on you if you want to ask anything at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the chat and see if I've got any questions. And at the same time, I'm going to look at the attendee list and see if we've got anybody that has any questions. So remember, do the hand raise if you've got a question. Let's see here. Okay, I've got the chat room up, and I've got a whole bunch of questions. So again, for folks that want to log off, you're free to do so. We'll go through these questions as we can. Some of them I'm not sure to the answer. A couple of them, the worst tornado in history and how big the biggest hailstone was. I'm not quite sure. I would Google that one. I don't know off the top of my head. Here's a really good one. I work 30 miles from home. This is Melody set this in. I work 30 miles from home, and I'm wondering if I report the same number for both areas. Excellent question. So a lot of times what we say is just call your home office and just tell them that you're where you are. You don't need to say, hey, I live here, but I'm over here. Just say, I'm Melody in this case. I'm a train spotter. Right now I am in, whereverville, United States, and I'm calling in this information. So that's a good question because some folks do travel a lot for work. So just call your local office, tell them where you are and what you're seeing. That's a very good question. I like some of the feedback. Great Skywarn class, adding surf reports. That's an interesting concept. For that gentleman, we do get some surf reports from the lifeguards, but that's an interesting concept to add that to our spotter class. I appreciate that. Let's see, how do high and low pressure air masses impact or connect to severe weather? That's asked by Sarah. Sarah, a fantastic question. So with high and low pressure, the air naturally rises in it. It's actually another lifting mechanism. Remember, we talked about warm and cold fronts, but an area of low pressure would contribute to severe weather that it naturally forces air to rise. So low pressure, with the students, we usually say lousy weather. So low pressure would be more likely to have bad weather. High pressure would be the opposite. Air naturally descends or goes down in an area of high pressure. Because of that, high pressure is happy weather and less likely to have bad weather. So that's a real good question, Sarah. Low pressure would be a contributing factor to severe weather. Excellent. I got Cooper, got a, let's see, you had a severe weather report in 2019. Yep, and so you're up toward the Raleigh area. Past weather we want to know about. That's a good question, Cooper. So let's say you get home from vacation and you see a bunch of trees down in your yard. You're not exactly sure when it happened. Call the local office. Be really clear with what you're saying, because if you call the local office and it's sunny out and you say, hey, we've got a lot of trees down, it's not going to make sense. We're going to be confused. So you say, hey, I'm a trained spotter. I've been on vacation for a week. I know it happened in the last week. I'm not sure what day, but I just want to let you know we have a bunch of trees down. So that's a good answer there. Jennifer, this is an excellent question. I'm very impressed with these questions. I'm not saying the last name on purpose, but Jennifer, you know who you are. Can the death of a single cell storm create a new storm? Yes, yes, yes. Very good. So what happens in those cases, let me see if I can go back to the graphic itself. Let's see if I can find the one. But essentially what happens is it creates outflow, or sometimes we'll call them mini little cold fronts, and a new one will form. So let's see, we'll just go to the cold front one. So what happens, Jennifer, is the thunderstorm develops, it collapses on itself, And it does that by hitting the ground and pushing out cool air. Well, that air that pushes out is like a little mini cold front. So that we call it an outflow boundary. As that moves ahead, it bumps into warm, moist air that hasn't been worked over. It creates new storms. So that happens all the time. If you look really carefully on radar, you'll see these very, very thin lines. It's really discontinuity in density, but it's between colder air and warmer air, and they move out of the thunderstorms, and they're mini cold fronts, or we call them outflow boundaries. So Jennifer, excellent job. Now, I like seeing this from Brody. Brody is 8 years old, folks, 8 years old. I know we have a lot going on in our country right now, so I like seeing young people taking a part of this. So Brody, this is an excellent question. He asked, what causes more damage, a tornado on the water or a tornado on the land? Brody, you should be real proud of yourself. Make sure you tell your teachers that you took the class tonight. You're not watching TV, you're watching something educational. So that's very good. And that's a good question. So Brody, the answer is the worst tornado, or the one that would cause more damage, usually is over land. And the reason for that is tornadoes over land have access to more instability, more warm air. They have a chance to get bigger. So our biggest tornadoes occur over land. They cause the most damage. The ones over the water tend to be weaker. You certainly don't want to be in one if you're on a boat, but they tend to be much smaller. So your answer is the land ones would cause greater damage. And again, I appreciate, Brody, you joining us. Any parents asking questions, if you got some young people, we're not saying their last name, let us know. Really appreciate that. And we got a lot of questions. We've got 43 people still logged on, so we'll just go through the list. And again, if you need to drop off, you haven't missed anything, you've already completed the class. These are just follow-up questions. Christina asks, is there an age limit to be a reporter? No. We want this open to all ages. Parents, of course, monitor your kids. We don't want a young person calling that is making up reports or not taking it serious. I was the 6, 7, 8-year-old that was interested in weather. So if you have a passionate person that's interested in weather, if they take it serious, if you're with them and help them report so they do it accurately, no issues with age. I like to encourage young people to do this type of training. Okay, this is a good one. So Stella, 7 years old, a lot of young people in this class. This is fantastic. Wants to know, what does lightning usually strike? Stella, this is a good question because I just had an interview with a gentleman up on the Outer Banks for lightning, and I always thought, metal was the big attractor, but the three major factors on where lightning strikes is isolation, and that means that you're out alone. So if you're standing alone, or if you're you're not in a group, if you're isolated, you're more likely to be struck. If you're taller, which makes sense, and if you're pointy, those are the three dominant factors on being struck by lightning. So a tall object that's pointy in a field by itself is more likely to be struck than an object amongst many others that's lower to the ground and not pointy. So that's a really good question, Stella. And Stella, since you had that question, I'm going to show where we got a lot of those answers, because we have a lot of men and women in the Weather Service that do a tremendous amount of work year round on weather safety and things like that. So I'm just typing in lightning safety to my good old Google browser, and I'm hoping the Weather Service is one of the first ones that come up. So we've got weather.gov/safety/lightning. So Stella, there's a lot of information on that. So if you just go to that website, I'm going to leave it up at the top. There's a tremendous amount of resources in the Weather Service that we have online. So it's weather.gov/safety/lightning. And while you write that down, I'm going to show you some myths and facts. I'm going to open it up in a new tab. This is, Stella, where I got some of these answers, because I just did a interview. Can lightning strike twice in the same place? Yes. If you're a house, are you 100% safe? You're much safer in a house than being outside, those types of things. So there's facts and all kinds of stuff on that page as well. And while I've got your attention, since we've got so many young people, if you just go to weather.gov, again, we have a lot of men and women in the local offices that do the day-to-day forecasting, but we also have the headquarters and folks that work on outreach. So this is our weather.gov. It's a great page for forecasting. Again, click on your area of interest. But if you scroll down, there's a lot of information at the bottom of the page itself. So not just the forecast, but weather safety. So if you click on weather safety, then you'll have access to all the different types of weather we get. So if you're doing a school project or you want to look through this, from heat to lightning to rip currents. So again, it's just weather.gov/safety. That's a really good resource as well. And the last one, so weather.gov/safety. And the last one I want to go over is Owly Skywarn. So it's just spelled Owly and Skywarn. That is our mascot in the Weather Service. So if you go to weather.gov/safety, that gives you your safety information. If you go to weather.gov/Owly, there's a lot of science education. Again, a lot of people in the Weather Service do day-to-day forecasting, but we have a lot of folks that are working on this kind of stuff. So weather and science, teachers, kids, students that are on, we've got it developed for teens, younger kids, parents, and teachers. So there's a lot of stuff, and this wasn't just put up this week. This has always been there. Jetstream is a really good online school for weather, and there's a lot of links here that you can kind of dive into. So I'm going to be kind of, let me see here. I see we have a question. I've never done this before. So Rance, R-A-N-C-E, I'm going to turn it over to you and see if we can do an audio question, because we haven't done that, and you're the first one to raise your hand. So I want to test it. So Rance, hope you're ready. I'm going to unmute your line, and then please ask your question. We'll see how this works. If we have trouble, you can just ask me in the chat. So let's see here.
Eric, you're able to hear me?
I am, Rance. Yep. We're ready for your question.
Thanks again for another good webinar.
You're welcome.
Simple question really on this thing. I've been to several of the trainings, but in the classroom training sessions, there's these spotter magnets that are given out, so that it helps people know, how to contact if they've forgotten or such. And just curious whether those spotter magnets will be available to the online classes, or how they would be distributed, or people
Rance,
need to stop by to get it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what Rance is talking about, and Rance, I appreciate you asking and showing everybody else that the audio works. This is great. I'm going to mute you. Just raise your hand again if you want to follow up. So to Rance's question, at in-person classes, we give out a beautiful magnet. Not to make you jealous yet. Once things get back to normal, we can talk about that. But it's a nice magnet that has what to report to our office. We give those out to in-person classes only. We don't unfortunately have any of those at the moment. So Rance, we'll have to wait until things get back to normal. What I would tell folks, we don't mail them out. So I would tell folks to sign up for an in-person class, and we can certainly hand those out. If you live in the local area, again, not now because we can't have visitors, but when we get down the road, we can certainly get those out, whether they're in-person classes or you stopping by the office. To follow up on what Rance was saying, this is when to send in a report, how to do it. All of that is on that magnet that he's talking about. So I appreciate the follow-up. That's fantastic information to follow up on that. In the meantime, Rance, what we do with online classes, it's not as good as the magnet. I certainly know that. We're going to send you some follow-up links. And one of the follow-up links we send to you is the spotter guide. So it's this PDF that I'm loading up right now. You can print it out if you want. We give these out at in-person classes when we have them. So we'll send out links to Cocoa Raws and the spotter guide, how to report, all that. I know it's not the magnet, but we'll make do. And when we get back to normal, which we will, down the road, we'll certainly do that. All right, so we got another question. I'm gonna try, let's see here. All right, I'm gonna got a couple more questions. We've got here, I'm just making sure some of them are repeat questions, so I just wanna make sure I'm kind of doing general. Let's see. All right, so Valencia asked a good question. I think this is good for everybody. So Valencia asked, I hope you're still on because I know it's about 10 minutes ago. Let's see. So she said that her and another coworker are 5th grade teachers. Weather's a big topic. Would we be able to facilitate a class for our students? Valencia, I hope you're on, because the answer is an emphatic yes, 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 and yes. And the reason why I say that is we used to do Google Hangouts where we would focus on the 5th grade curriculum, and we could have up to 25 classes. In fact, we had one planned for, I think, next week, and we had about 25 classes and 1,400 students. Unfortunately, we had to cancel it with with what's going on with the students not being in school. So to supplement that, we added virtual classes on our website. So Valencia, I hope you're still on. Email me if you need follow-up. On our Skywarn page, if you scroll down, tomorrow morning at 10:30, we have a weather basics class. And that is, the focus will be on 5th grade weather standards, including topics such as differences amongst the world, high and low pressure, warm and cold fronts, jet stream, water cycle. Valencia, I think it's up to your level. I think you're going to like that. That's something we've never done before in terms of a virtual outside of the Hangout. So Valencia at 10:30, you can have your students sign up. We have 1,000 lines open, and I think we have 150 registered. So plenty of room. Any other teachers listening, all we ask is you just sign up individually. The reason why we say that is if you signed up as a teacher and then you gave out that unique link, it won't work. So just have each parent sign them up, each child sign them up, if that makes sense. If you're all in the classroom, of course, you could sign up and play it for your class. But since we're all at home, they're different, unique links. It won't work if you send out one, because only one person will be able to log on and the rest will not be. So hopefully that makes sense. Just send out the link. It's very similar to this class. You'll just have them register, just like this class. It's a different one, but same thing, what their name is and all that, and go forward. Valencia, if tomorrow is too short a notice, our next one is March 27th, also at 10:30 in the morning. If you all like this, teachers, let us know and we'll schedule more. We put 2 out there as a test, and we just want to see what works. We didn't want to schedule too much if it wasn't going to be popular. So good question on that. Let's see. So Rance, I got your question. Here's a good one. How much rain is there in a Category 5 storm? That kind of gets to our point about categories only related to wind. So whenever you hear about a Category 1 storm, 4 storm, 3 storm, it's only based on wind. It says nothing about rain or storm surge or duration. So to answer the question of how much rain do you get with a category, such and such storm, we're not sure. We would only know what the wind speed is. And I say that because we want people to focus on all the impacts, not just the category itself. Valencia, I see your chat. That's awesome. Get all the 5th graders on. That's fine. 5 classes, 30 students. Yeah, that's great. And I know it's short-term notice. Just have them log on tomorrow, and if they can't, just have them do the one on the 27th. So that's great. Washington County Schools, fantastic. I see that you all are going to log on. Terry and Valencia, we've been kind of crazy in the office this week, as you might imagine, kind of, seeing what we're doing with teleworking and keeping our operations going. I sent an email to all the principals in Eastern North Carolina just this afternoon. So they may not have had time to forward it on, linking to those opportunities. So share away. We've got 1,000 lines open, so fill it up. Let's give these students some online stuff. And I know teachers, you're doing a great job, but I'm sure you could use some help. So if we can be helpful, we certainly want to do that. Let's see. As a teacher, could you include the links you have shared for kids? That's a good question, Sarah, and the answer is yes. I'm at home now. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. Luckily, I've got 3 younger kids. Nobody was running around, thanks to my wife keeping them kind of out of this area. When I get back to work tomorrow, in my follow-up email will be your certificate and links. So just forward those to whoever you want to forward it to. That's fine. Let's see. So those are good questions. I'm a high school student interested in weather. This is from Brooke. Are there visitors allowed to visit the weather station? Brooke, I hope you're still on. Please message us back if you are. Unfortunately, at this time, there's not. If we have, what's going on, if we have a normal situation, Brooke, you would be welcome to come by the office. In fact, let me show you what we do at the office itself. Let me see if I've got this link. Okay, here we go. And again, teachers and young people, this is not for now. You can't visit now. But what we usually do for outreach is we go to festivals, and if you go to weather.gov/MHX/outreach. So weather.gov/MHX/outreach. And Brooke, message us if you're still on, because I hope you are, to answer your question. If you scroll down, we have it broken down to office tours, student resources, student opportunities. Okay, Brooke, I see you're still on. So weather.gov/MHX/outreach, go to that site, and you're going to have my email after tonight. You'll just click on student opportunities, and down the road, when we get back to normal, we have a lot of opportunities. In the past, we've had internships at the Weather Service. And then we also have a shadow program. So if you just scroll down on that, there's all kinds of stuff. So we kind of break it down, Brooke, into multiple tiers. Tier 1 is you stop by for a couple hours and just shadow us. Tier 2 is a little more intensive, and Tier 3 would be like an internship. So yes, Brooke, when we get back to normal, you can come on in. But Brooke, email us, because in the meantime, I can direct you to stuff through what's called Comet. It's an online thing that you can do. So if you're stuck at home and you're running out of stuff to do, I can hook you up with some links in terms of things to do. And if you don't have my email, I'm going to bring it up on the presentation for folks. Just shoot me an email. Again, I'll probably won't get back to you until tomorrow, but it's at the bottom. So Brooke or any other teachers or students, just if you got any questions, just email me at the bottom. Let's see here. So I see, all right, so Brooke got that. So I see Terry's mentioned a couple of the festivals, the Black Bear Festival in June and the Peanut Festival. We love doing outreach, so just let us know about that. Obviously, at this time, we're not scheduling anything, with what's going on, but we've always done that, Terry, outreach, and we want to get up there. We cover all of Eastern North Carolina, not just Carteret County. So you reach out to us, and we'll consider that once we get all back to normal here. So I'm going to take a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap things up, because I know it's my kid's bedtime, so that means it's probably your kid's bedtime as well. Let's see. I'm just trying to go through and organize all these. Let's see. What age? Okay, we did that, Terry. Anna asked how many supercell storms occur on a yearly basis. I don't know exact number, but we get quite a bit. Here in Eastern North Carolina, it can vary on how many we get. They're more likely in the Central Plains in the southern part of the country, but we certainly can get our fair share. And sometimes we get what's called mini supercells, smaller in scale, but same structure. So I'm just scrolling to the very top to make sure I didn't miss anybody. If I skipped your question and I didn't answer you, just email me. I'm just trying to quickly go and make sure I didn't miss. Oh, here we go. This is a good, oh, Ryan left, shoot. During Hurricane Dorian, one of the biggest threats we faced was the tornadoes. Oh, that's great. How do you figure out where the tornadoes are in large hurricanes? So with hurricanes, it can be tricky. Usually with a landfalling hurricane, it's on the right side of the storm, but not all two hurricanes are alike. So sometimes it can be on the left side of the storm. Usually with hurricanes, we don't have big tornadoes. We certainly had a big one in Emerald Isle, but that's more the rarity and not the norm. They're short-lived, and usually, people are already sheltering in place and doing what they need to do, so they're not as impactful. And again, I hesitate to say that because we certainly had a bad one in Emerald Isle this past fall with that. I got a couple new ones, and I know I said I'm wrapping up, but we're at the bottom of the list, and Cameron has a real good question. And I apologize for my webcam not working. It froze up about halfway, so you probably saw enough of my face the first 30 minutes. It's not a big deal. So Cameron, this is a good question. Any good colleges and universities recommend for weather? And we do. So Cameron, I'm going to load that up. Cameron, I'm going to talk while I'm typing. If you live in North Carolina, It's pretty easy. We have a lot of universities. What I'm trying to find now is the American Meteorological Society list. I can't do two things at once. So American Meteorological Society school list. And Cameron, they've got that. So I'm loading that up for you. So if you just Google, meteorology schools or AMS for American Meteorological Society, they have a nice list of how many schools. It's always hard to pull up. I don't see it now. Let me see. These are scholarships. So I'm drawing a blank. I don't see it on here, Cameron, but what I was going to say was I can shoot you that. If you email me after, I can send you a map. They usually have it pretty easy to find on here. What I was going to say is we're lucky in North Carolina. I hope, Cameron, are you in North Carolina or not? Because we've got a lot of schools. We've got University of North Carolina, Asheville. I see we've got one of our coworkers in the chat room. He's a Rutgers alumni. So he said Rutgers, but so in North Carolina, we've got UNC Asheville. We've got a couple coworkers that went there. We have NC State in Raleigh. That's a big meteorology school. We have University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and we have East Carolina University. I apologize to any of the others I may have missed. I can't remember if UNCW Wilmington is doing it or not, but I know NC State, UNC Asheville, UNC Charlotte, and ECU. And then one of my coworkers was teasing me about Rutgers. Cameron, you're from the Triad area. Fantastic. So as a parent, I would say go in state because it's cheaper. If you get a good degree, you apply yourself in college, you get internships. It matters more what you do in college and through your internships than what university you went to. So I would seriously consider one of the North Carolina schools. If you have some scholarships and you get good grades, you could go out of state. There's University of Oklahoma, Miami. We have a coworker that went to Miami. Florida State is another big school. In the Northeast, there's Linden State in Vermont. I went to Oswego State, which is in upstate New York. That's a good school. There's SUNY Oswego, so it's State University in New York. Oswego, Brockport, Albany. Those are all good schools. Stony Brook is out on Long Island. So I won't ramble on too much more. Cameron, I mentioned those triad schools or North Carolina schools, NC State, UNC Asheville, UNC Charlotte, ECU. And then if you got scholarships and some opportunities out of state, you can consider some of those other ones. But just email me, Cameron, and I'll send you the full list. All right, let's see. I think this is a good one. We've got, can there be hail bigger than a quarter? And the answer is yes. A gentleman asked what the biggest hailstone was. It used to be Coffeyville, Kansas, and I think it was like 7 pounds, but it changed a couple years ago. I think it's in Nebraska. So I won't even try to answer that one. So what I am gonna do instead is show you our homepage, our YouTube page, NWS Morehead City. We did have a pretty big hail event. I think it was last spring. So if you go to NWS Morehead City on YouTube, if you scroll down, I'm gonna play this. I hope the volume's not too loud. Okay, golf ball size hail. So we've got the question that a couple minutes ago was the biggest hail. I hope this is not too loud. It's pretty loud. All right, so I'm mute. I don't know if you still have the sound with that mic. We'll have to test that out because I muted it. Let me see if I can play it one more time. I'm really curious if somebody could answer me how loud the audio is, or if you can hear the audio. We do not hear it. Okay. All right, Kathy and Cameron, I appreciate that. We haven't done a lot of videos in the presentation. Mike Lee, I appreciate you telling us. So I was curious about the audio part. So we'll kind of make a mental note of that. But this is video that Matt Engelbrecht up at ITN shared. This is from Bayview, North Carolina. You can't hear the audio. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can. But this is golf ball size hail last year. This is in our area. So that's pretty impressive. So yes, we can get hail the larger than the size of quarters. That can certainly happen. All right. Well, before I lose my voice, because I got a class tomorrow at 10:30, we're going to wrap things up here. We had a tremendous amount of feedback. We peaked at 55 people, and we still have 21 of you on. So that's very impressive. I appreciate you all joining us. Look for my follow-up email tomorrow. If I didn't get to your question or something didn't make sense, or you want to share it with other people, just email me. I'll respond to that. So just as a test, we're going to wrap things up. I appreciate everybody joining us, and just give me raise your hand if you are all set with the class. I'm curious to see if we got everybody responding. All right, look at that. This program is pretty cool. So yeah, just raise your hand if you're all set. I'm just kind of fooling with the software and learning as we go. All right, everybody, we're going to end it. We will try, cross our fingers, to post this on YouTube tomorrow. So I'll send that link if it's successful. Have a great night, and I really appreciate you joining us. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care.